Alright, so the 700 and something prediction for the second fire sign of 1 Kings 18 is Chislev 12, which is December December 9/10, sorry, which is this Sabbath coming, Friday sunset to Saturday sunset, December the 9th to December the 10th. That's the fire sign, because Elijah went up to the top of Carmel, meaning garden land, and that could apply to when this church became Isaiah in 2015, and we believe it does. But it also could apply to the kingdom of God being installed under Jesus as Caesar, and he became Caesar on Chislev 5, which is the Pentecost after Tishri 16, and Satan's lease, his final lease extension with all the terms and conditions paid off, ended on Tishri 14, 2022. And the Gentile Times malediction, the 10-year gap, the 98-year Maccabean gap, 10-year Jehoiachin exilic gap, and the 98-year Maccabean gap, extending it by 108 years, took it from 1914, when Russell had it ending, to 2022 Tishri 15. Russell started it in 607 Tishri 15 with an incorrect chronology for the fall of Jerusalem to Nebuchadnezzar. In fact, in 607 Tishri 15, that was the first Booths festival after the fall of Josiah, the death of Josiah at the hands of Pharaoh Necho, after which Pharaoh Necho, through Jehoahaz, started taxing the Israel, and therefore became their Caesar, because pay Caesar's things to Caesar, and Caesar's things are taxed. But now Caesar is Jesus Christ, and when that is confirmed, which I hope will be confirmed on I hope it's confirmed. I wish it wasn't confirmed by a fire sign, but there you go. So on the 12th, if there is a fire sign, it's 7 days after Jesus became king. So it confirms Jesus is the king, because that's how I interpreted it, that's how we came up with the date, because in 1 Kings 18 verse 42 or 3 or 4, it says, Elijah says to his attendant, go up, look in the direction of the sea, having bent down and done a mushroom with his body and put his head between his knees. Having gone up to the top of Mount Carmel, he does this mushroom shape. He says to his attendant, look out, go up and look in the direction of the sea. And he goes up and looks, says there's nothing. He says, go back 7 times. So the top of Carmel is Chislev 5. That's what I take it actually is the start of the garden land, in that it's the first installation of Jesus Christ over non-Adamic Abraham. The second is over Adam on Chislev 6, and then it's over Isaac on Tebeth 5, and over Cain on Tebeth 11. And those are the 4 salvation types of humans on the planet at present. And Jesus is appointed over each type on the specific appointment date, and installed 50 days later at the Pentecost after the first fruits. He's appointed at first fruits, he's installed at Pentecost. And of course 1 Kings 18 is Pentecostal. So 7 days after Jesus began to be installed, and his first installation was as Caesar to Abraham, 7 days after that, which is 6 days after he was installed as Caesar to Adam, and Adam is most of mankind. So right now, it's my understanding that Jesus really truly is Caesar, which would mean that you should stop paying taxes, other than for direct services, to the governments who are no longer entitled to them by divine law, if my chronology is right, and that's a big if. It's been wrong 700 and something times so far. So, but we will see if it's right, and eventually it will be, because if you keep on seeking, ye shall find. So that's the date, Chislev 12, when there should be a mushroom cloud seen by the attendant rising above the sea, which is the seawater of the Thames round about Dartford. The reason we say that is at the highest point in the garden land of Kent, because Carmel means garden land, and Elijah was standing on the top of Carmel, bending down with his body into a mushroom shape. with, you know, the curved back and his legs as the stool, the stalk for the mushroom. The highest point in Kent, the Garden of England, is Ide Hill, and the nearest seawater to that is the Thames round about Dartford, so that's why we say that. Or it could be in Manhattan, over the Hudson, because the garden land in America is New Jersey, the Garden State, and the highest point in the Garden State is, unsurprisingly, called High Point, New Jersey, and the nearest seawater to that is the Hudson round about George Washington Bridge. So we're expecting a explosive cloud above the Hudson or above the Thames this Sabbath, which is, you know, after sunset local time, locally on Friday, and before sunset locally on Saturday. That's the prediction for the second fire sign. The alternative dates for that are Chislev 20 to 22, which is December 17 to 20, and then the third fire sign we're predicting for either Tebeth 5-6, which is January 1 to 3, which is 31 days of the sentence count of 1 Kings 18:42 to 44, after Chislev 5. 31 days takes you, or 30 or 31 days depending on how you count it, taking you to Tebeth 5-6, January 1 to 3, or it's Tebeth 20 to 22, which is January 16 to 19. The Chislev 20 to 22 and the Tebeth 20 to 22 are 7 times after this church was appointed over the 2 MCs, after having become non-Adamic Isaic, which we became on 2015 Ab 14 to Ab 16. That was our Jubilee restoration to be, actually it wasn't a Jubilee, but it was our it was the beginning of a Jubilee system actually. But yeah, it was our restoration, non-Adamic restoration. It wasn't, it was our Isaic conversion from Abrahamic. So it was another step up the salvation ladder. The way this thing works is you get into all these salvation covenants, and then you get the blessings of the covenants. And it just so happens that we're now in the time, because Satan's lease has ended, and because it ended in 2012. That's when the first blessing, Abrahamic blessing, occurred. But then there are paybacks, and Jesus got a ministry in the middle of it, so he had to pay that back, and the various other terms and conditions, and the 42-month lease that was given to the dragon in Revelation 13, and then they get chucked out for a 2,000 more days of Mark 5, but when you do all the calculation, if I have it correct, have a look at understanding 659 and have a look at understanding 271-11, you realise that the 42-month lease ended Tishri 14 this year, and that Jesus was appointed Caesar Tishri 16 and installed Chislev 5. So if you add 7 days to that, you get Chislev 12, the second fire sign. If you add 31 days to that, you get Tebeth 5-6, which is the third fire sign, we think. However, if you add 7 times of the Laws of Witness Alienation times to 2015, Chislev 21, when we were, which is the late 2NC Pentecost, the second 2NC Pentecost, when we had our second installation over the 2NCs in Isaiah Zohar. We didn't get one in Abrahamic Zohar, because when Abraham went to sacrifice Isaac, he left the 2 men alone and just went off with Isaac and a donkey and the firewood, and then he returned to them after he'd not sacrificed Isaac, and instead sacrificed the ram caught in the thicket by its 2 horns. And that period is actually 38 months of John 5 of Beth Zatha, between us becoming Abrahamic and us becoming Isaac. We died to Adam 2012, Sivan 14, and became Abrahamic. We died to Abraham 2015, Ab 14, and became Isaac. That isn't the end of it, because Isaac did not live indefinitely. We have to eventually become Methuselahan, which we will do in the ark, which will rest upon the mountains of Ararat on the 17th day of the second month, which in this present coming fulfillment is Chislev 17, which is not the rapture. Well, it's during the rapture of the Abrahamic 2NCs. Anyway, I digress. So the 7 times of the Laws of Witness Alienation times run from 2015 Chislev 21 to 2022 Chislev 21, and so either side of that is 20 to 22, and that could be the second fire sign, or indeed the third, Or you could add the sentence count of 30 or 31, and that would take you to the Tebeth 20 to 22. Actually, or 21 to 23, actually, but that's not. I don't think that's right because it's not Pentecostal. Tebeth 21 is the 20 Pentecost of the Chislev one secular year, which comes into force it is in force due to Jesus having become Caesar. When Jesus becomes Caesar, the calendar changes, just as when Jehovah became Caesar of Israel when they were in Egypt in 1513 Nisan. Well, actually, he didn't become Caesar then. He was appointed Caesar then. Maybe he did. Maybe he did become Caesar in Nisan, but they didn't agree his law until Sivan. Who knows? Probably in the scripture somewhere. Anyway, when the calendar changed to Nisan, so actually he must have become Caesar in Nisan. And of course, with God, the sacred and the secular are not divided. He being a God, can be both a secular and a sacred king, both a priest. He can be both an Aaronic priest and a Davidic king, can God, so can Jesus. Anybody who's divine is a mother and a father. They don't have a problem with that. People who aren't divine have to be one or the other. So, if you're a man, you can be a priest or you can be a king, but you cannot be both. Or you can be both over two different groups. So at this point in time, if I'm not mistaken, and I generally am, I'm certainly not mistaken, I don't think, as regards the church. I'm a sacred king of this church. But I'm also, and that's the sacred king of Isaac, non-Adamic Isaac. Anybody the only people with an Isaac body, non-Adamic body, have a 4EC baptism, which is the baptism of this church, which I'm the Elijah for. I started it. I was baptised by God, or actually, not by God, from heaven, not by God. I was baptised, I don't know who baptised me actually, but from heaven, probably Isaac. I think it must have been Isaac. I'm a sub-covenant of his. It must have been Isaac, who is of course alive. I am the God of the living, says Jehovah. And as Jesus interpreted, they're living to him, Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. But I'm actually a vassal to Jesus, given that I run the last true church, Zoa, and therefore kind of vassal Caesar to Abraham and Adam, but none of them accept that. I'm not a particularly effective Caesar at this point, or vassal Caesar. Anyway, you can be priest to one group and king to another, but you cannot be king and priest to the same group. You can't be mother and father to the same kid, but you can actually be mother to one and father to another, which I'm sure the alphabet people will enjoy. Alright, so that's the chronology. So then you count the 7 times of the alienation times and you get to Chislev 2022, and that is, as I said, December 17 to 20. And if that's wrong, then you have to count the 30 or 31 times more, and you get a month later, which is January 16 to 19. And those are our predictions for the far sides of 1 Kings 18. And as I've said, that the incredible news is, the Watchtower did well in 1914. They had the correct start date, more by providence than by good calculation or interpretation. But they had the correct start date for the Gentile times, but they had the correct end date if you count it continuously. And something did happen in 1914. There was the First World War, and that was one of the signs of the times. So that was a sign that Jesus was present. So there was a fulfillment, but it wasn't the end of the Gentile times, because it had a gap of 10 years when evil Merodach raised up the throne of Jehoiachin in Babylon above all the other thrones, which obviously ends the Gentile times, makes him the king of his people again, even though they're in exile. That lasted 10 years. And then in the Maccabean gap, the wonderful Demetrius II wrote a letter to, I think it was Jonathan Maccabeus, saying, I tell you what, pay the taxes to the temple, don't pay them to me. That is a direct instruction to pay Caesar's things to God, which says that God is Caesar, which says that the Gentile times has ended. And that lasted 98 years until Julius Caesar said, no, pay the taxes to me, please. And in fact his predecessor also said that, but the guy running Israel at the time didn't listen to him. I think it was Herodotus. But you do listen to Julius Caesar, and he appointed, what's his name, the Idumean, I can't remember his name. Anyway, he appointed an Idumean and he did pay the taxes to Caesar in 46. So the Maccabean gap goes from 144 Tishri 15 BC to 46 Tishri 15 BC. So you add a 98 plus 10 to 1914 and you end up on 2022 this year. Also, the great thing about this year, which the Church of England will love, is that the Reformation began with the Act of something or other, of ecclesiastical something or other, in 1532, sorry. And it was the 12th Act out of Parliament, out of 13, which if you randomly, evenly spread them throughout the year means it occurred in around about November, December or Chislev. And you count the 70 weeks of Daniel 9, taking a day for a year, and you end up 490 years later, which is 2022 Chislev, which is this month. So this is significant as regards Jerusalem. 70 weeks are determined upon the people and upon the city. And those 70 weeks expire this month. Thank you.